welcome to Jossie Talks number 6, which is a really special one. It's the Jossie's way of giving back to the community. It's all around finding your work purpose and trying to help people land their dream jobs. And I don't know if you saw my LinkedIn post, you probably did, which is why you're here, but we were really inspired by Joe Wicks. He's gone out there and become the world's sort of favorite free virtual physical education PE teacher, and he's I just had a message here. Sorry, just one second. Yeah, just around the screen. Can anyone else see us? Is that just Vicky, or is everyone else having issues seeing us as well? If you have any issues, then let me know. But no, you can see us all. Cool. So yeah, Joe Wicks obviously became the world's sort of, leading PE teacher, Brewdog, who are really sort of challenging beer. They challenge a brand. They make beer. They started making hand sanitizer. General Motors started doing ventilators recruitment. So helping people find meaningful work, and it's what we've done for 10 years. It's what we're passionate about, finding people the right job, not just any job, because and that what we'll discover today, any job isn't the right job, it's just a job. And our mission is to champion the hidden heroes, and that's why we're doing this, and it's our way of giving back, really. So thanks so much for tuning in. I really hope this helps you in some way. And if you don't know me, I'm Savan. Hello, I'm the founder of Joss Search, and today I have been joined by 3 incredible speakers. One, Sarabeth, she's a TEDx speaker. She's the author of a brilliant new book, More Than My Title. We've got Benafsha, who, oh, nice, yeah. We've got Benafsha, who heads up the administrative function at Centerbridge Partners, a global investment firm, and her journey there has been really amazing and actually quite untraditional. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. And then we've got Monique, who is here on, I don't know which part you guys can see, but here she's on my left. And she spent 10 years working as the right hand to one of my personal favorite authors, Simon Sinek. She now runs her own brilliant coaching and consulting business, and is also a public speaker. And they're career experts, really, who've given up so much time for this cause, and we're really grateful. And I hope each one of them can bring a unique angle that you can go away with, that will help you with your mindset and give you the confidence to evaluate your career and where you go next. So Monique, why don't you give everyone a little bit of an introduction about you and who you are?
Wonderful. Thank you for having us. And hello to everyone out there in the land of the interwebs. As you have mentioned, I spent the last roughly decade working with Simon Sinek, helping him both build the movement, build his career. I operated as his producer slash assistant slash, I don't know, at times he would call me his boss. So we kind of did a little bit of everything, which works out for this conversation. And yeah, now I do own my own consulting and speaking firm where I do lots of coaching. And I believe that we all need to find out what our own strength is, what our own passion is, and work towards that, and own our own strength and help let everyone else fill in the holes. So I'm all about amplifying your own strength and then practicing on what you need to work on.
Great. Well, I'm excited. It's such a what you're going to cover is such a broad topic. It's kind of abstract to some people, so I think it's gonna hopefully you'll break it down and make it a little bit more accessible. Benafsha, why don't you give us a little bit of a background?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Benafsha. As Savan said, I'm the manager of administration at Centerbridge Partners. Centerbridge is a global private investment firm, and I've worked there for about 5 years now. And in my time, I've actually had a few different positions and a very fast-tracked career, where I started off as an administrative assistant myself. Then I spent the majority of my time in human resources. And then most recently, sort of coming full circle, my position is to manage the administrative function globally, which includes direct management of about 45 administrative professionals. And prior to Centerbridge, I was a recruiter. So I'm hoping that with that experience, my HR background, and now my hiring manager responsibilities, I'll be able to give you some insight and helpful tips.
Amazing. I did have an agenda, because I think when you've worked on the other side, on the dark side, on the recruiter side, and then you go in-house, you do have a good perspective on recruitment and how challenging it is. And Sarabeth, over to you. Give us a little intro.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's great to be here. Oh, wow. My background is so interesting. I started as an art teacher, actually, and I now call myself a hybrid professional because over the last decade, I've been in innovation strategy and ecosystem building and a lot of higher education and just creating these really big, complex initiatives at organizations. And so along the way, I had my own professional identity crisis. I didn't know who I was anymore, how to talk about myself. I dreaded that "what do you do" question. And that's when I started researching professional identity and realizing a lot of people are struggling with that pain point. It's really hard to know, how do we introduce ourselves in a time when people are changing jobs a lot, traditional occupations are disappearing, and who are you? How do you sell yourself? So that's when I have started writing and speaking more about professional identity. And that's what I'm going to talk about today is, how do you present yourself as a hybrid in a workforce where people are just so many things, but that's confusing. So I'm really glad to be here to share that with everyone.
Thank you. I think it's a notion that is so familiar to so many people, that feeling of being a jack of all trades and doing so many different things, and actually being able to articulate that without sounding like you don't know what you're talking about is quite challenging. So we want this, as usual, to be as interactive as possible. We're going to be launching polls, and we're also running a competition today. Woo! So that's new. And we're going to be giving 3 lucky winners a 30-minute coaching session with Monique and myself, and we're going to be giving away copies of Sarabeth's. Share a picture of you watching this webinar on your story. Tag us into it. We're going to share the details on that with the hands, and you know if you've won by Monday. So please take part. You've got a really good chance of winning. And yeah, so as always, please send any questions into the Q&A, and if there's a specific speaker that you'd like the question to be answered by, then direct it to them. We'll share the recording by tomorrow afternoon, so that anyone would benefit from it once it's live on LinkedIn. Please share it with them and keep an eye on it on your inbox. So we're now going to run a very quick poll before we get cracking, just to understand where everyone's employment situation is and what you hope to get out of today. So you will see a quick poll come up just asking you, what is your current employment situation? Please answer now. That should be enough time, and we can just quickly share the results, just so that we can see where everyone is at. So we've got 33% employed, 33% laid off, and 31% unemployed. So 67% of the audience are either furloughed or unemployed. So which is what we thought, and you know, definitely who we're going to be talking to the most during this webinar. And the second poll was just around what you really hope to get from today, and what you hope to achieve. So to walk away feeling. So if you wouldn't mind just quickly choosing which one you'd like, whether it's confidence to take my next career steps, to understand my career purpose, to understand how to improve my personal brand, to improve my CV, or how to better navigate my job search. So if you wouldn't mind just quickly sharing the results of that, and then we can make sure that we give you guys that. Hopefully it's not all of them. Well, actually we are going to cover all of them. So, but you know, hint, what's the word? Yeah. Okay, good. Pretty even. Great. Exactly what I wanted. So good. Well, luckily we're going to be covering all of those, but the most one is sort of understanding career purpose. So Monique, no pressure. Over to you. I guess start the hardest part, which is your work purpose. And it can be a bit of an abstract to try and ask, like, what's why? And so, Monique, I'm going to direct these to you. So you worked for arguably one of the most influencers in this area. And he talks about why it's important to start with why, Simon Sinek. So why is the most important question to ask why when evaluating your career?
Thank you. It is absolutely the most important thing to do before you step into a new job search. If your why is the fire within your belly, it is the purpose, it is where all of your movements and actions and behaviors and influences start. It all starts with you knowing what your purpose is, why you're here, what is driving you forward, and where you are going. It is not the destination. We hear this a lot. People talk about things like happiness as a destination. People talk about something as a destination. It is not a destination. It is all about what is bringing you there. And if you don't know who's driving your train, if you don't know what your purpose is that is driving the train, how are you going to know where you're going? So, for example, my why is to execute on the unique things that help others feel loved, supported, and safe. That is my why. I'm an executor, sometimes called the executioner, but I am the executor. I like to do things. And what that helps me know is that I need to be in a situation where I'm actually able to do something, to execute on an idea, to execute on a project in order to help other people feel loved, supported, and safe. This helps me know why I'm starting off. It also helps me know when I'm going to run into conflict. It also helps me know when I'm going to be out of balance if I don't have that, my why forward. So it's just a good indication. It helps you really get to know who you are as a person, and helps give you language to speak out on who's driving your train.
And how did you go about doing that? How did you realize that?
Well, I cheated because I worked for the guy who created why. But I will tell you, which is sort of interesting to note, is that I didn't get my why. I didn't find the words to my why until I had been working with him for 5 years. I knew what it was. I could feel it. I could touch it. I could taste it. There was something throughout my whole life that I was the person who, if you said to me 4 years ago, I love roses, I will remember that. I will write that down. I have that next to your birthday. And whenever it's your birthday, I will remember some things because it helps you feel loved, supported, and safe. I've always been that person. I've always been the person that organizes all the events and things, but I just didn't have the language, the tactile things that went with it. So I went around in circles with this for a very long time and had lots of different words, but the feeling was always the same. And then about 5 years in, I think it was actually Simon who called me the executor. He might have called me the executioner, but there's something about that word that took me back. There was something about that executing word. And that's what you'll get when you can find your why. You get chills. You get a sense of like, wow, that is the beacon that shines through my heart every single day. It's helping other people feel loved, supported, and safe. And if I don't have that, I'm not going to be satisfied in any job.
Wow.
Or in any relationship.
I've got goosebumps. It's so like, it is when you look at it, you say, right, why? It's such an abstract thing, but when you break it down like that, it sounds so simple. And then once you know that, you just apply that. And then when you're having a bad day, you can just use that to keep you motivated.
Sure.
So
there's a lot of ways of going about finding your why. And I want to make it clear, your why is not being a mother. Your why is not being a nurse. Your why is not the thing that you do. It is the representation of who you are that you're bringing forth in order to represent yourself. We all have our why that's bubbling underneath of it. And it's pretty secure by the time you're about 18 years old. So you have that driving force within you. And then all the actions and things that you do are representations of that. So that's the distinction.
So in addition to finding your purpose, your fire, your why, what other types of self-reflection should we do before we start a job search? Because I think quite often you say your why, people think I'm a nurse, that's my why, so I'll just look for another nurse job. Like, what else should we be doing?
I am a huge fan of personality tests. I am a huge fan of just knowing more about who you are on the inside. Personality tests give you an easy way to find that out. There's a number of different ones out there. For example, I personally love Strengths Finders. And what Strengths Finders has done for me is give me the language to not only understand myself, but for me to then describe myself to other people and describe myself when I'm in an interview or a job search. This is who I am. I am an achiever. I have activator in my top strength set. Again, we tend to describe these things, and I like to do stuff, or I always like being in charge, but to have that language within a personality test, your astrological sign, what your name means, what your birth order is, all of these things combined help you understand more about who you are. And the important thing here is accountability. It really is you knowing who you are so that you can find the job that represents who you are. It is our responsibility to find the job that you love, that fits you. It is not someone else's responsibility to give that to you. That is my most important point. If you remember one thing that I say on this webinar, it is that it is my responsibility to find a job that fits me and my personality. It is not someone else's responsibility to give that to you. So knowing these things, knowing what your biology is, knowing what your personality is, it is helping you know when you're operating at your natural best and know when you're out of alignment. So you can say things in an interview like, my number one strength is an achiever. I struggle when I'm in a 2-hour meeting where we're not going to achieve something, where we're just going to knock around ideas. But that not only helps them understand that, but that helps me understand that. If when I go into a meeting and I'm looking at the ceiling, like, are we just going to talk about random things all day long for 2 hours and knock around ideas? Like, I want to die during those meetings. But instead of blaming somebody else or pointing a finger at somebody else and saying, why are we doing that? I just say, I'm not in alignment. I'm not in alignment with what my strength set is. So I can just sit here and be out of alignment. And I know when I leave the meeting, I'm going to be just fine. So again, it just helps us use who we are to find the job that we love.
And the alignment is a really important piece around not just the things that your strengths, the things that you're good at, but also the values that you stand for. I think if you can identify your why, that will lead to the type of person that you are and the values that you believe in, which will help you find the right environment.
Absolutely. I think your values, they all go together and all of them are super important. I'm not going to put them in a rank order that your values are more important than your why, more important than your personality. You have to have all three of them. And with your values, especially if you're not aligned with a company that shares the same values that you do, if you're working in an environment of people who don't believe what you believe, there's going to be strife, there's going to be stress, there's going to be heartache. No matter how small that is. If you're a family man or woman and the company that you work with is mostly made up of single people, that might be fine, but there might be strife. There might be something that happens within that. And again, you can still move forward, but it's good to know that. So when there is strife coming up, you could just say, look, we just come from a different place. And I'm sorry, I am going to go home at 5 o'clock, even if we have this really important meeting, because I have a family and this is one of my values. We tend to think that, as you mentioned earlier, I was a nurse, so I should be a nurse. Or I used to work for a paper company, now I'll work for a pen company. That makes sense. They're the same thing. Well, it's not really. Like, you don't need to partner. It's people that have the same values and believe what you believe and share your vision of the world. That's the person. It doesn't matter the thing that you do. It matters why you're there and what you hope to achieve.
Whenever I meet people who are, in a job that I can tell is right for them, more often than not, they're talking about the people that they're with, the culture, the environment, the values that they've bought into. Because I think that, and now more than ever, like, realizing that you're part of something you believe in is hugely important.
Hugely important.
Do you think, given the challenges of COVID-19, do you think it's even more important to ask yourself why now?
Absolutely. I think this has given us all an opportunity to pause and step back, whatever that means for you, pausing. I know some people have lots of kids and they don't feel like this is a pause, but in the universal construct, this is a pause. The entire world has been stopped. So using this time to reevaluate who you are, it's a perfect time to do that in this new construct of whatever this new reality is created. But you have the time now to stop and say, what do I actually want to do? What makes me happy? What do I love? I know it's something that you did do before, but maybe it's not something that you want to do anymore. And that's okay. You're allowed to pivot. You're allowed to change. The universe does it all the time. Why are we allowed to do it? So take that time, look into who you are, and know that we don't have to go to work every day and be unhappy. That is not, we all grew up looking at our parents. I certainly did. And it was, stressful for my parents, and they would go to work every day, and it was, and it was this slog. And that's what I thought work was supposed to be. I thought you were supposed to go there and kind of hate it, but you made a paycheck. So that made it okay. And then knowing and going through the history that I've gone through, you don't have to. You can enjoy work. You can enjoy what you do. And frankly, there is not a difference between who you are at work and who you are at home. This amorphous work-life balance thing, I really don't believe in it. You're the same person at work than you are at home. You just may wear a different uniform. So let's find out who we are in total and use that with all the things that we do, with our social activities, with our hobbies, as well as our work, all encompassing.
And with COVID-19, like with us all being at home, we're all, if you are in a job, actually exposing that side of you quite a lot more. I think people are getting an insight into who you are as an individual more than ever if you are in a work environment. And if you're not, I think, let's say you're doing video interviews as well, people are just, I think, understanding the human aspect. I know you talk a lot about the human, and actually, I think this is the reality, is we are humans, and this is the perfect time to evaluate what you're doing and why you're doing it. How do you go about bringing, you mentioned, like in an interview you could say, I am an executor, not an executioner, because they might not hire you, so they could kill everyone. But if you're an executor, how do you go about articulating that in an interview, but also bringing it forward on your CV or resume if you're in the US? How do you go about bringing that forward in a way that is positive?
Absolutely. I wholeheartely believe that you have to bring all of these things forward, not only on your CV, on your resume, but also in the interview. As we know, the resume is only there to get you the interview. That's the job of the resume, is to get you the interview. The job of the interview is to get you the job. So this is a 3-part system. Your resume needs to bring forth who you are. I want to be able to know who you are from reading this one piece of paper. And I'm sure Benafsha will talk about this, how many resumes you get that look the same, feel the same. It's the vanilla resume that just goes by your desk. And if we get a resume that says, this is who I am, and at the top is my strength, my why, my personality, really bringing forth who we are, that shows that you're confident. It shows that you're charismatic. It shows that you care about yourself, that you care about who you are as a person. And if I care about me, I'm obviously going to care about the others around me. And then in the interview, also bringing those things forward. My strength set is such that blank. Where I run into trouble is blank. So in these instances, I would ask for blank. So you can actually say that in the interview, and then these people that are interviewing you understand, and when you come forth to the table, they can actually either give it to you or not give it to you, and now they understand why. So yeah.
Benafsha, if someone was interviewing with you and they were talking like this, and you saw this on their CV, how would it make you feel?
Great. It's one of the things that I look for. It's exactly as Monique said, like your resume gets you the interview, but the conversation is what's really important for me. But also you need that resume to shine through and tell your story, your accomplishments, your achievements. What are you proud of? What challenges have you faced, et cetera. So Monique said it very well.
Yeah. And again, these different ways to look into it, the personality tests and such, it gives you language to use. Instead of saying, I like to do things, you can say, I'm an achiever, I'm an activator, I'm a this. My top strength is relationships. I love being around people. Even something as really simple as being an extrovert or an introvert is hugely important in a job that you have, and hugely important in an interview. Because if I'm an introvert, I can actually say, look, I am an introvert. I rather enjoy doing projects on my own. I don't mind being in meetings. I like being in meetings. I like working with other people. But when I do a project, I tend to be on my own. This is great information for your employer. Then they know when you tuck away and go over, you're not upset, you're not angry, you're not mad at something. It's just who you are as a person. So knowing that gives you the language, it gives the language for other people to describe you as well.
We've had a couple of questions around understanding the concept of portraying yourself via a CV, but practically, how might that look? How do you sort of visually see that looking?
Well, I'm a bit of a non-traditionalist in my entire world. So Benafsha, you might actually hate what I'm about to say, but I'm all for making your CV represent who you are. I do agree that there are some standardizations that should go onto it. Don't have a 9-pager, keep it to the 1 page or back and front, keep it to some of the structure. Grammar is important. All these things are super duper important. But I love the idea of having your personality come out on the CV. Put it on the top. This is my why. Here are my strengths. Here's where I excel. That's who you are encompassing. I have that right at the top. And I encourage people to have that right at the top, because what goes below that is what you did that represents who you are. What you do is not who you are. So who you are is way more important than what you did, because you might have never worked in a pencil factory before, but who you are represents the value of the pencil factory. So you're able to do that job now. I would literally write it out at the top. And potentially, again, you can use some of these words to incorporate it into listing out what you did. So as an executive assistant, I could say, sure, I did travel, I did calendar, I did this. But if I have this language from my strengths finders, I can say it in a different way that's a little bit more powerful.
Does anyone else have anything to add on that? I think you summed that up brilliantly. Thank you. You did that better than I could do. So I think the last sort of section around finding your work purpose and why it's important, the last sort of question that we thought about covering was, you obviously talk a lot about communication and how it affects your work, and the clearer your communication, the better for everyone, for you, for your employer. How can you just sort of go into that in a bit more detail, just to really cover off the why, I suppose?
Sure. I think communication is one of the most important factors in your success or failure in a job or in life. Your ability to communicate is one of the most important things that you have. And lucky for all of us, it's a skill. So it can be learned. It is not something that you were born with or not born with. So we can all practice this, which is amazing. And where I think we're tripping up now is that we're not practicing this art of communicating. So we're getting very bad at it. And I've been reading lots of studies of recruiters and various HR groups that are actually having trouble finding someone who is technically competent to do the job and competent in their communication skills in order to either work with a team or work with their outside community. They're having a lot of trouble. They're finding people that are technically competent but don't have that communication skill, especially, in the younger generation that have really not been practicing the art of verbal communication. So knowing how to do that and looking into that is going to make or break probably an interview. Because again, your resume can get you the interview, but if you don't have those communication skills to put forth in the interview, you might not get that job. So I could go on for literally 4 days about communication, but that's my biggest point.
And do you think this situation is helping with communication? Do you think it's going to help people be better or worse at it? Things like Zoom, for example.
It's really interesting because I've actually been saying this, I slightly, I feel like the social media and the interwebs have taken away from our ability to communicate in the past 5-6 years, it's really taken it away. And I feel like this pandemic has actually improved our verbal communication a little bit because of the amount of video calls that we're doing. I've heard more. I've read a study a couple of days ago that said the video communication, FaceTime, WhatsApp, and Zooms, and all of these different things have increased to such a level, and actually telephone conversations have gone down. The amount of telephone conversations have gone down, and the video communication has gone up, and email has gone down. So I'm loving this. I'm loving the fact that we're practicing the communication, we're reading each other's faces, and we're having body language, and we're able to read each other. I'm a big fan.
I definitely think it's good, because I think I have friends who always prefer text, and I've always tried to call them, and I know they hate it. And now they're like, hello. I'm like, yeah, they've answered my call. This is so exciting. Someone's asked another question. Are there any tests on our communication styles that we can take, or any books that you recommend so that we can better our communication?
Sure. I think all personality tests help with your communication, because again, knowing how you operate in the world helps understand what your communication is. Again, I'll go back to the achiever strength that I have as an example. When knowing that I am an achiever, that shows me how I communicate. I am task oriented. So bullet points, numbers, all these stuff. I love me some bullet points. So that is the way that I communicate. I am very factual when I'm gone. I'm not going to build a big relationship over email. It's just not my mechanism for doing that. So I think all communication, all personality tests will help you with that. But there are listening tests like echo listening profile that helps understand how you receive information, which also helps you know how to communicate out. There are lots of nonverbal communication books out there, if you to know and research what your communication style is with your hands and your face and all the nonverbals that we give out, without a doubt. And again, I'm not saying that there's one test that you should take. I think you should take 30 of them if you have the time, communication or not, and combine all of them together is going to give you a picture.
Now the time is definitely to be doing the personality test to really get under the skin of who you are, I think. Okay, the last question around that we've had on the Q&A that I think would be quite helpful is, my CV is good, I believe, but I get stressed with interviews. How do I get over the fear of failure? None of my previous bosses have said I've done something wrong. What can I use to answer the question without failing something? So if they're asked the question, what have you done wrong, or what's your greatest mistake? How can they answer that?
Okay, so there's two parts of this. That word failure is a very, very strong word. I have definitely had that within my life. The fear of failure has been very real in my life. So whomever asked that question, I'm with you. I feel you. I empathize with you. Just wanted to say that out loud. Again, these things can help you out with something like StrengthsFinders. It actually rank orders your strengths. So they don't call it weaknesses. They just call it what's at the bottom of your strength set. So I know that potentially my weakest strength was adaptability, which is super embarrassing to say out loud, but adaptability was very hard for me for a very long time. So again, when somebody says to me, where have you fallen down before? Where has things gone wrong? What are you weakest in? I have the language, and I can say, historically, adaptability has been a little tough for me because I have an achiever strength, which means I see things in black and white. So sometimes when I'm in the gray, I get a little stressed, I get a little confused. And what I do with that is I ask a lot of questions. So when I get into that spot, I might come to you and say, can I have 10 more minutes of your time? Because I'm really unsure. I'm feeling stressed out with this. So you can actually say it in a positive way. You can take these areas that you want to work on, or the areas that you failed before, and use it as a strength and say, I need help with this, employer. Can you help me? I tend to struggle with this thing. So it helps me when I'm in environments that feel like this.
I think it shows real confidence. I think if someone's prepared to say, this is me, this is my whole self, and this is what I need to improve on, I think that shows them as a confident person. Lots and lots of questions around how to find these personality tests. and how much Strength Finder is. Monique?
I think, I mean, it's gone up a little bit. When I took it, it was like $12. I think it's $18 or $28 or $38. It's not an expensive test whatsoever. And it's done through the Gallup poll. So if you go into StrengthsFinders Gallup, GALLUP, you can find that one. But again, look into astrology, look into what your name means, go deep. Find what works for you. Some people don't like StrengthsFinders. There's DISC assessment. There's Myers-Briggs. There's Hexago. There's, I mean, there's Insights. There's a number of different ones out there, and you can just go online and research and see what makes sense to you, what feels good to you. I mean, I'm even like going into my history, my genetics. My ancestry. I've looked into my ancestry to know why I do certain things. And it all very much makes sense.
Benafsha, do you guys have any that you use at Centerbridge? Any personality profiles?
We actually don't, but I have done StrengthsFinders, and we've led that for internships and other like undergraduate as students are going into their careers. And I love StrengthsFinders. I personally in HR had done Myers-Briggs. But I don't know more broadly in the company, but those two.
Yeah, they're good ones. I think DISC, Myers-Briggs, they're great ones to get started with.
The Enneagram, people love that one too.
Enneagram, you love Enneagrams? Yep, Enneagrams. I forgot about your love language. I get questions about this all the time, and it's so, people think it's very funny, and I mostly get laughs from the gentleman that I tell this to, but knowing what your love language is so super important. That acts of service to me means everything, and that I can.
It's great. I've not heard of that. I'm going to check that out. Love language. Great. Well, Monique, thank you. I'm sure you're going to have lots more to cover, but I'm just conscious of time, and Sarabeth has prepared some great stuff to go into. So we're going to move on to topic 2. Which is around your career identity, how to create your own elevator pitch, what that is, and some personal branding tips. Sarabeth.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in and start just by commenting on a few things that Monique was talking about, because I think she mentioned in the beginning she didn't have the words, right? And so a lot of this career work is about articulation and finding language. So I think I wanted to emphasize that point. And this bigger goal of being to find who we are in total. I wrote down that quote she said, and I think that's a lot about hybridity. Who are you when you bring all your different parts together? And the last thing I want to echo is I think of career as like a 3-legged stool. And the legs are your passion, your purpose, and your identity. So your passion is what you love. Your purpose goes back to what Monique was saying, that why. But identity is that leg of the stool we actually forget to talk about. It's who you are. And what do you call what you do?
Yeah.
So that's where my research, I think, really fills a gap. Yes. But we still don't know how to brand ourselves. What do you call that? And so that's what I want to talk about. I'm going to share some slides. See if I can pull this up right. Hold on one second. Cancel.
You can see.
I know you can see it. I'm trying to get to the present. There we go. Okay. So the way that I myself is my hybrid professional identity title is being a creative disruptor. And I'll tell you how I got to that, but that's the language I use to kind of put myself in a nutshell when I introduce myself. But that hybrid identity of a creative disruptor is framed on 4 primary professional identities I have, which are artist, researcher, educator, designer. So I wanted to start and show you how I represent myself, because that I think is critical for other people to do too. It doesn't work to just list all the things you're good at and all the identities you have. You need to know the ones that really are core to you. So when I was researching that and trying to discover my own identity, and kind of back to Monique's point, this is a lot of reflective work. And the time we're in with COVID is a really amazing moment to do a lot of this deep self-reflection that maybe people have ignored or haven't done in years, because identity is something that's fluid and evolves. So whoever you were 10 years ago is probably not the person you are today. It's time for a refresh. So I wrote a book to talk about professionals in the workforce and professional identity. When you look in the landscape of literature, there really isn't that much out there that just talks about identity. So More Than My Title is the book, and it really frames what identity is, who hybrid professionals are, how they work, and really the conceptual landscape. There is a whole chapter too for employers and managers and recruiters, because working with and hiring hybrid professionals looks a little differently and requires some different management styles and practices. But the other question I get a lot is, so question one is, who are hybrids? And question two is, how do I find my hybridity? So that's why I created a workbook, because it's all the tools. How do I put this in practice? So what I'm going to give in the next 10 minutes or so is a little overview of hybrids, but then a few tools that help people put this into action, because I want you to have things you can walk away with. There's 4 really core premises. If you hear anything from what I say today, it's this. First of all, you can give yourself permission to be all your different identities. I don't think people hear that enough in society. This concept of being a hybrid is you can be all your different things. It's okay, but you have to know how to package that. That's the caveat. Part 2, kind of what Monique was saying, you have to learn how to articulate these relationships between your identities. Words are really important, that language. The third one is intersections. This is who you are when you cross and combine your different identities together. Your unique value lives there. You have to be able to see your intersections. And then the last part is you get to own your hybrid identity. So my job title has gone from being a program manager to being a director of entrepreneurship to being an art teacher. Those are the formal job titles I was assigned. But my hybrid identity of being a creative disruptor, I have no matter what job I'm in. So I can always present myself that way if I'm going through a job transition, if I don't know how to tell people what I do. Sometimes I use it as a second intro when I have a regular job title. I'll say I'm Sarabeth, the director of blank program, and I'm a creative disruptor. So your hybrid identity is yours to own and change for as long as you want to use it. Also, I want to give you some tools. So if you go to this URL, morethanmytitle.com/handouts, there are 3 different activities I'm going to just give a glimpse of today, but you can download these and then work on them your own later. One is an elevator pitch Mad Lib, super fun. I'll talk about that at the end. One is a word list, going back to this idea of language. I learned that people don't know how to see and find their professional identities, and giving them a word list is like the starting point to activate a brainstorm. And then the last one is just a Venn diagram tool. You can draw your own, or you can use this worksheet. So who are hybrid professionals? Well, here they are. These are people we are familiar with. They can be famous celebrities like Michelle Obama, Bono, Lady Gaga. What freaking job title would you give any of them? It's really hard to describe what they do, and that's the point. These celebrities have multiple things they're doing, from philanthropy to being a lawyer to being an activist, a performer, a singer, a songwriter. The list is miles long, but we know them because of what they stand for, and that's their professional brand in the world. We kind of just know them as their name now. But this is happening just in the regular workforce too. You don't have to be famous to be a hybrid. So these are snapshots from LinkedIn with the different just headline of how people are identifying their identities. So some people are using plus signs or commas. Other people are actually creating hybrid titles. So Brittany has Chief Firestarter at Fireside. One of my favorites over here is Marsha, who has Siegel Household Chief Sanity Officer. I think a lot of us might be managing that title right now. So there's a creative lens that's happening here where people are creating new ways to describe who they are and what they do. Whereas the other people using commas and pluses still kind of look like a list of identities. This is an example of different types of hybrid branding. So when you add your professional identities together, what do you call that? So a hairstylist therapist can be a hairapist. That's a real hybrid identity. manager, action taker, executor, project fire starter. You can tell that these are identity words, but also they kind of play off of those strengths finders that Monique was talking about too. There are 3 types of professional identity, and this is the framework I outlined in the book. So first, we're all really familiar with singularity. We call those experts and specialists in the workforce. The second type is multiplicity. These can be freelancers, job crafters, polymaths, Jack and Jills of all trades. There's a lot of words we use to reference people with multiple professional identities. But there's a third type, and this is the one we've been missing: hybridity. Who are you when you cross and integrate identities together? So my definition of a hybrid professional is this: a person who integrates different professional identities and works from the intersections. That integration instead of segregation is the key differentiator. I love to use the analogy of pizza because it's hard to kind of think of who are we when we combine our identities. Most people have never been asked that question before, but we are familiar with pizza. So traditional pizzas are like pepperoni and cheese, and that kind of goes to the generic job title, right? But a lot of pizzas are much more inventive and tasty and creative. And we go to certain restaurants because they have the gorgonzola pear, thyme something pizza, and it's delicious. Like, that's a really outstanding pizza. Those ingredients are your different identities, right? And how you bake and blend them together. So what do you call that kind of pizza? That is your hybridity. So one thing I want you to reflect on today is, what are your professional identities? Can you list them? This is where this first worksheet comes into play. It has a list. And I ask people to circle and highlight what are the ones that stand out to you, that resonate with you. As a caveat, you're looking for both the ones that light you up. They can be connected to your why. These are ones that energize you. You're like, I love being the extrovert or the guru or the investor, whatever those keywords are. But also, if you're trying to change jobs or move into a new market, you can pick aspirational identities. You're like, I want to be more of a, therapist in the future, or I've really had this analyst side I haven't been able to activate. So you select as many as you feel you resonate with. But then the next trick is this: you have to reduce and narrow the identities to 2 to 4 that I call your primary professional identities. So if you circled 20 identities, some of those you probably use every day. They're very frequent for you. You have to use them because otherwise you feel a piece of you just is withering and is kind of being lost and forgotten. So those are your primary identities. They energize you, light you up, and they probably activate your why. There's usually a connection there. The other identities are important too, and it's not like they're lost and forgotten, but they're only used once in a while. They kind of weave in and out. Maybe they show up on the weekend or just, every other week. So it's good to know the difference because you want to focus on the primary identities for your hybridity. That's where the Venn diagram comes in. So in my circumstance, I'm the artist and the researcher and designer, right? I use 3 circles for my 3 identities. You'll notice that in a Venn diagram like this, there's 4 intersections. So I have 4 different ways there's hybrid identities happening. So then I call the next step professional identity math. You start to add these identities together and say, what am I doing? So forget about the labels, because labels are just words. Focus on the actions that you're doing between the identities. So for instance, when I'm the artist and researcher combined, I'm making sense of data. I'm using maybe mixed media art forms with information and numbers. I'm being really empathetic. I'm seeing patterns, etc. What you start to do in each intersection is look for themes that are coming up across all of your different identities. And that's when you can get to your hybrid title. Like, I noticed creativity and disruption were big ideas surfacing in my intersections, and I called myself a creative disruptor. There's more steps, but I'm giving you the snapshot today. This is the last activity, your elevator pitch. So now that you've figured out your primary identities, how do you tell people what you do? So I start, and it goes something like this. Hi, my name is Sarabeth, and I'm a hybrid professional. I call myself a creative disruptor. That means I combine my professional identities of being an artist, a researcher, an educator, and a designer to transform systems and do complex problem solving for audiences in all sectors. Boom. That's how I start this 3-part introduction, where the first part is calling out my hybridity. The second part is giving people the identities that shape and inform my hybridity. But the last part is the most important. It's the relationships. What do those identities do when they're combined? Because the relationships between your identities is your hybridity. And learning how to talk about that succinctly and clearly is the trick. So if you want to learn more about that, that's just the high-level overview for today. But there's more information on my website and in the books. And I really look forward to sharing more.
Thank you, Sarabeth. I think it's something that we have a lot of executive assistants and administrative professionals in the audience. And I think it's something that they can all relate to, is being asked to do so many different things and actually getting enjoyment from lots of different things. But if we link it back to what Monique was talking around, finding your why and the things that drive you, that's a really great way of actually, the worksheet is such a great way of actually working it out, because the words there and the labels are so, they make it really clear and really simple, I think. So they're all on your website, right? So they just have to go to More Than My Title and they can download the worksheets and they can start that journey.
Yeah, the handouts today are morethanmytitle.com/handouts, but everything really is there. And I think they're great tools. That's why I created them, because people have asked me these questions so many times.
Amazing. And just sort of focusing on, why do you think it's important right now? Like, why do you think being a hybrid professional is even more important during these times?
I mean, we are in an era where a lot of people do things that sound the same, right? It goes back to that vanilla resume. So how do you stand out? How do you differentiate yourself? I think to Monique's point, that top part of the resume is calling out who you are and why you do what you do. And if you can understand your intersections, that is really helping you say, this is my unique value, because I'm an artist, because I do research, because I do innovation, whatever those key ideas are, I'm able to deliver and create X, Y, and Z, which other people don't have, because that's your unique recipe. So I think the reason hybridity matters in the workforce is it's your differentiator, your unique value, and definitely makes you stand out.
And how do you think it can link to your personal brand? So personal brands is a really big thing now. We all know that, you know, LinkedIn's really important, especially for job hunting. LinkedIn, you know, how you represent yourself on there, and how, and I think all those pictures were from LinkedIn, right? That was their title. How why do you think it's more important than ever, and how do you convey that, you know, on your LinkedIn profile?
Well, let's take a scenario, right? You're at a networking event back in the days when we could gather, and you introduce yourself and you're like, hi, I do marketing. And then I say, hi, I'm a creative disruptor. Which one piques your interest more? How many marketing or sales or kind of generic people have you met? And you just right away kind of stereotype what they do, because you've heard that word before. Creative disruptor isn't too unfamiliar, but it's also like a little different. So suddenly you're intrigued, right? Because the goal, as we were saying before, is to get to that next step of asking more questions, getting to know more about you, getting further down that chance to get a job offer. And so your job right now is to help people see you as not being like everybody else. So I think, you know, the hybrid type brand is a new way to frame yourself that isn't so similar to all the other people with the same things.
And right now, I mean, we all know unemployment is skyrocketing, you know, so it definitely is an employer's market right now. And the more you can do to elevate yourself and to distinguish yourself and to actually demonstrate that you do have a variety of skills. If you think that employers are probably on limited budgets, so they do need people who can multitask, who can do lots of different things, because whereas before they might have been able to afford 2 or 3 people, they now maybe can only afford 1. So actually, if you can put yourself forward in a way that shows that you're adaptable and versatile, but also that you're proud of that and that you know what your strengths are and you're confident, I think, that's definitely going to help you in your chances of getting a job, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think some of this has to do with if you're an executive assistant, what kind of executive assistant are you? If you're just using that language, can you add some more descriptors, some more color, so that at least you show I'm like a strategic executive assistant, or I'm a dynamic executive assistant. There's more you can add to kind of elevate and give a little bit more emphasis on why you're so special. And I think the question I get a lot is like multiple identities and how is that different than hybridity? And I'm just going to emphasize this again and again. It's the intersections, right? It's those points of overlap. And when you can figure out your intersection, that's actually your expertise. You are an expert in a variety of identities, and that's what you specialize in. So it takes a lot of work to unpack and understand, how do my identities combine in a way that makes me supercharged? So that's why people want to hire me.
And I think Google recently did this. They changed the executive assistant title to being an executive business partner, right? So, and I think that's great, because that does reflect the sheer variety of tasks that, well, if you identify with it, of course, like the sheer variety of tasks that some executive assistants are being asked to do in the workplace. I think that we've got lots and lots and lots of questions around the CV and interview tips. So I think unless there's anything else that anyone wants to cover on that section, I think we'll move nicely onto the next topics, which are all around sort of the practical part of navigating your job search and the CV and interviewing part. So what I might do is just answer some of the questions that have come up around the CV. But actually, one question for you, Sarabeth, if that's all right.
Sure.
I really relate to the hybrid conversation. I work in a small firm and have sort of tailored my own role as the years have gone by there as an EA/project coordinator /HR/employee engagement contact. I'm looking for a new opportunity, but I'm not sure how to put myself forward when I don't really fit with a standard job title. How would you go about looking for a new hybrid role in a different company?
Yeah, it's, I would ask, what are those primary identities? So out of all the roles that person just listed, what are the ones that really stand out and resonate and matter the most, and that you're trying to move forward? And if you're trying to swap some of them out, then this is the time to do it. And then you do have to kind of play a matching game of looking at the job descriptions and titles that you find attractive or that employers are saying they want, and kind of bringing in some of the language so that you look like you're a match. So if they're like, we want a strategic HR person, then use some of that language in your title or branding, and also show how your other identities inform and support that and actually make it even stronger because you bring that to the table. So it's a little bit of a balancing act of what the employer says they want and the different hybrid things you are, and kind of marrying that. Because I'll be honest, this concept of hybridity is not the norm yet. We are on the front end of a wave building that. And so it takes people that think they're hybrids to help employers understand the reason why hybridity is valuable. They're used to just generalists and experts. And we have to encourage employers that, hybridity is something they want to hire for. So that would be my first tip.
Amazing. Benafsha, we've got a question that I think would be good for you to answer. What would your advice be to someone who is looking to change industries? You've done it yourself. How would you go about doing that?
Yeah, so I think more companies nowadays are becoming a little more progressive in the sense that the standard job description of everything that they're looking for, years of experience that directly relate to the job that they're hiring for, hopefully will start to transform to more of what type of person are we looking in the role? What impact do we want them to have, et cetera. So that's the type of company that would be probably more willing to hire someone and make this change. Like you said, for myself, I moved from being a recruiter to an administrative assistant, then into HR, and now back to managing an administrative team. And I, by far, did not start in a finance industry, especially a private equity firm. And so when I'm hiring, that's not necessarily what I'm looking for. The majority of people that I hire are changing completely their career or their industry. And that's why being able to tell your story of why, even if you don't check off all of the boxes there, like why you can learn and why you're going to do that and why you're passionate, why are you making this change, that will help you get that.
So it just goes to show that it's so important to know why, because I think you can't just expect that your employer is just going to know that. We don't all, we don't walk around with a CV like printed on us. We have to be able to talk that through. Cool. Well, I'm just going to quickly cover some of the sort of practical bits on how to navigate your job search, especially during a time like this. I think, we are in, it's one of the guys who works at Just Search, Josh, he made a joke about the word unprecedented, and I feel like a complete plonker using that word, but it is unprecedented times. It's totally challenging out there, and the reason why we wanted to put this on is because I can't actually imagine being a job seeker in this time. Like, I think it would be worse than any recession. I recruited in 2008. And, at least there was a little bit of stuff going on, and it's definitely quieter. Obviously, there are some industries that are hiring, but it is going to be quieter. So I think just be kind to yourself is my first tip. Just know that this is a really tough market. Unemployment, we all see figures, it's huge. There are so many people out of work. So, and it's not a reflection of you, your ability. Your company may have run into financial trouble and can't keep you, and there's just going to be an unprecedented number of people on the market. So my first thing is just be kind to yourself. Know that you're not alone. This is a really challenging market. So once you've done that and you've realized that it's going to be more difficult than maybe it might have been in a previous market to get a job, be really strategic in your approach. I think a lot of people just start firing out their CV and, approaching absolutely everyone they can possibly approach in the world. And actually, that's not the best way of doing things. The best way to do things is to be really strategic, have a plan, and set your objective, which goes back to your why and your purpose and your identity, and linking those things up together, and putting that and making that clear in your plan is really important. And take as much time with this as you possibly can, because I don't think in any other world would you have this time. So right now is the perfect time to do all the things we've been saying, to actually stop and think, and then start approaching your job search. Simple things like having an Excel spreadsheet. The amount of people I meet just don't have a tracker of where they've sent their CV or who they've approached and why they've approached them. Like, have a tracker, have a centralized place that you will go back to time and time again to know where you're going. It gives you that sense of control. You can't control whether you're going to get a job or not. All you can control is what you put into trying to get a job. So do all of that, and that gives you a bit of a comfort and sense of achievement, and and it makes you feel like, okay, this is what I've done something today. I've achieved these things. Look at all these companies that I've approached. Make sure you protect your social media presence. I can't go into this enough. Like, recruiters, we are nosy people by nature. I get paid to be curious and be nosy, and it's brilliant. And most people who work in HR are kind of like that, right? Benafsha, like we like listening to people. We like knowing what people's stories are, and we're going to search you out. So make sure you check your social media presence, your LinkedIn networks, your profile on LinkedIn, and spend some time actually going through your LinkedIn network, and make sure you're connected with all your former colleagues, and that you're really happy with your brand. Find people that you think have a good brand and represent the type of role or identity have, and change your profile to fit accordingly. Register with all, and make sure they're private as well. Like, you know, no one wants to see pictures of what you did when you were 10 years ago and you were, you know, doing something inappropriate. No one needs to see that. You need to make that private. Register with relevant recruitment agencies. So find a really great partner who understands you and has your best interests at heart, and actually recruits into the industries that you want to get into. It's all very well and good if they recruit for roles that you don't. There's no point approaching them. Make sure that they recruit for the types of jobs and companies that you want to work for. Upload your CV on all the appropriate job boards. So there are loads of job platforms and job boards. Put your CV on there. Use all the keyword title tags. Make sure you've set yourself up with loads of searches so that you get notified whenever a job comes up that's what you're looking for. And again, this takes time. If you simply sort of spam everything and send out the same CV and you just apply for every single job, you're just not going to get the same level of response. You need to be strategic. I can't emphasize that enough. It's much quality over quantity here.
Can I make a point on that, actually?
Yeah, go on, please.
I think this is a question that I get a lot from people who are concerned if they make their CV very specific to them, that they're almost narrowing the playing field. And they're worried that if I make my CV so specific, I'm only going to be considered for 4 jobs instead of 40 jobs. And both on the employer side as well as the employee side, I say, so what? That's great. I love that, actually. As an employer, if I make my job description so specific that I'm only going to get 3 resumes, they're going to be 3 of the best damn resumes I've ever read in my entire life, because I made my job description so specific. If I make my CV super specific, I'm going to find someone who's going to read that CV and go, this is the girl for me. Need her. It's putting yourself forward. Then you won't get considered for some of those jobs that frankly you weren't going to fit into anyway. So it's actually saving you time and energy of not having to go on 45 interviews, not having to get rejected 45 times, not having to get a job that you hate and then you quit after 1 month or 1 year. It saves your time and energy to hone in and get it right on the first try.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Benafsha, I think you probably know this as well. Like, we get so many CVs, right? Like, that's just something that we see so much. And actually, if someone's taken the time to really tailor it, that makes a difference.
Yeah, completely agree.
I also think you should approach the companies you want to work for directly. I know I'm a recruiter and this is probably a terrible thing to say, but you know, it's the truth. And actually, we don't recruit for the whole world. We're really specialists. We only recruit for investment companies. So we only have a teeny tiny percentage of the amount of jobs that are actually available out there. So if you put all of your eggs in like the Joss search basket, you know, that's going to be hard. So there's nothing wrong with approaching companies directly. And I'm gonna really embarrass Ben, my husband, but he spent about 2 years, or a year maybe, saying he was going to work for Innocent. He literally every day was like, I am going to work for Innocent. I don't care what, but I'm going to work for them. Innocent Drinks, they were a really cool smoothie company. You've probably all heard of them. They sort of changed the way the world communicated with their customers. And he applied so many times, and eventually he did get a job there and he did work at Innocent. But he literally made that his focus. That was his objective. He was like, I want to work there and I don't care what I do, but I'm going to get a job there. And he did. And it took a year, but he did. So that was, you know, my other thing is, you know, to approach the companies directly. You know, 80% of job opportunities aren't advertised. You know, Benafsha, if you got a CV from someone who, you know, really wants to work for Centerbridge and they've taken the time to understand, you know, that's going to stand out for you, I think. Have I got, you know, in terms of like navigating your job search, is there anything I've missed, guys, the panel? Is there anything that you wanted to add onto that? Anything that you think I could add in?
I mean, again, you're using your network in LinkedIn, but also use your network in your community, in your circle, in your social circle. We all know of someone who has a great job at a great place and they love it. And if your values are mirrored with your friend's values, your best friend's values, and they have an opportunity to help you, look within your community and say these things out loud. We tend to be a little embarrassed if we don't have a job, if we don't have employment, if we don't have something. We don't want to say that out loud and ask for help. I'm a big proponent of raising your hand and going, guys, I need a job. I needed this. I've gone to my friends and saying, I'm single. I'd like to be hooked up with someone. Say the thing that you need, and then people can help you. If you're not actually saying it out loud, no one reads your mind. We all think that everyone's got this beautiful crystal ball somewhere inside of us that we can know what you're feeling and know what you need. They don't. We're all just trying to survive on our own. So say the thing out loud.
Yeah, plus one to that big time. People don't know you're looking for work until you tell them. And people have thought I was in a different role. And I was like, no, actually I'm on the market, but they hadn't talked to me in a while. And so I think using your network, both online and in person, have been really like the gold mines for me.
Yeah, and I'd just add that between working with recruiters, the next biggest success for me when hiring is referrals. And that's from employees internally that either was a friend with someone or worked with them in a past life. But that's where we get some of our best hires from.
And most companies have a referral network, right? They have a referral scheme. So they're incentivized to actually find people to work for the company themselves. So if your friends don't know you're looking for a job, they're not going to think of you for that perfect job that might be sitting in their actual organization. So the networking piece is really huge. And aligning the values is so important. And, when you are thinking about your sort of wish list of companies that you want to work for, you've really got to think about what it is that company stands for, what they believe in, what's their purpose, what are their values, and do they align with my own? That's really important. Do you guys agree or?
And oh God, yes. And ask the questions in the interview. First, do your research beforehand. Google is not just for shopping and some of those things. Google these companies that you're going into interview with, know what their history is, know what they've been through, look at their news, and then use that. Say, I saw last year that you guys did a whole thing for Habitat for Humanity. I've actually worked for Habitat for Humanity as well, and I love that offering. It's one of the reasons I wanted to apply here. It shows the employers that you actually care. Or if you don't know, and maybe you're going into an interview slightly cold, you can actually say, my values are honesty, integrity, so on and so forth. What does your company stand for? What are your values and how do you show them? Because it's not just what your values are, asking them how they actually represent that is, because they could say, well, our value is customer first. And then you say, well, how do you do that? And they have no answer to it. Again, data points. You still say, but it gives you data points.
I once went to see a client. I was like, what are your values? And they were like, I don't know, the usual. I was like, great, good. Yeah.
Bye.
Clearly they mean something to you.
I mean, values are huge. I think it goes to culture fit. The jobs I didn't get hired for, I think they could sense and I could sense we weren't the right fit for each other. And that is a huge part of the interview too, not just can you do the job, but is this the right culture for you? And I've learned time and time again, I've got to ask more questions about that. And I have a question actually for all of you. In people's LinkedIn headers right now, they're saying, I'm looking for, they're showing that they're job seeking in their header. Do you recommend people do that, or what do you think about that?
No. My personal, I don't know. I'm going to be, my personal thing is no. I think it's better to put what your identity is, what you stand for, what you want to achieve, and then make a tailored approach to an individual or organization and make them aware that you're looking for a job. I think there's the demand thing, there's the wanting, make them want you, and I think that is not my advice. No. Benafsha, you've been at Centrebridge for 5 years. How important is finding the right culture and values?
Very important. One of the things I look for when someone is interviewing is a clear demonstration and interest in the role and the company. So as you guys said, it's easy to say, I'm interested. But it's what I look for is someone that's done their research in advance about the position and the company, someone who asks me a lot of specific questions. So rather than asking, what's the culture like? I'd rather hear, I read that your firm has a culture of transparency and feedback. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And what other aspects of the culture you enjoy? I really do think that culture is one of the key things. And you can have a job, your administrative assistant job can be at any company. But what keeps you there and what keeps you motivated and what's kept me just moving into different positions, but knowing that I'm going to stay at Centerbridge, is the company I work for, the values they have, the people I work with, just the culture of kindness and transparency and intellectual curiosity. So all those things, I think, play into why it's so important.
And you fundamentally will be happier.
Yes.
So it might take longer to find, but you will be happier and you will stay there. And I always say there's a job for everybody. There's a place for everybody. And, you know, just because one place isn't right for you, 2 places aren't right for you, 10 places aren't right for you, keep going. Somewhere will be right for you. And ultimately it's just a case of finding that place. And you can't do that if you don't know what that is. You're then just looking in the dark. I don't know the saying, but there's a saying, around the dark, and that's the one that I mean.
Especially for the assistants, knowing the values that your executive holds. It's not just company. If you're going to be working with a specific executive every single solitary day, and being an assistant, it is such a personal job. I know everything about you if I'm your assistant, including how much money you have in the bank and when you're fighting with your wife. I know all of these things about you. So why not ask those questions right away and say, what is meeting the person who you're going to be managed with, meeting your executive, what are your values? How do you represent them? What do you do in your spare time? You know, I want to know that about my executive.
What's your leadership style? How do you like to communicate? You know, how do you manage people? How would you describe your management style? You know, I think when you're meeting a future manager, it's so important to understand who they are and whether you're going to work together. And if you've done your personality profiling and you understand your strengths, how you articulate your personality, you'll be able to identify with your future leader and management whether there's a similarity, whether they say the words or not. You'll just know. So I think it is really important. We've got lots of questions, so just bear with me. I'm just going to fly through some of them. I have a great CV with very transitional skills. I really have only had 4 jobs, all long term, and I've worked in a few different sectors, but I'm finding it difficult to get a job as I'm in my early 50s. Do you think that employers are not looking at me as I'm a bit older? I have very current skills. Unless anyone else is happy to answer that, I'm very happy to answer that question. Absolutely not. You know, I think I can, you know, obviously, again, we're really niche recruitment company that we recruit for investment companies, but the clients I work with, they value experience. And they are, especially in times like this, people who have got experience are an absolute strength and value add to the organization. And I just don't see it. I just don't see it anymore being an issue. We have placed a whole range of candidates from really junior at the start of their career to the really experienced end. You know, we've placed people in their 60s and their late 60s. This is clearly their last job before retirement, and they've even said that in the interview, and they've been hired anyway. So I really I know it can be a fear, and I hear it a lot, but my advice is please don't think like that. You're placing a barrier. You flip it. You've got so much to offer. You've got so much experience to offer. So like, just park that and think about it as a real value add. Your strength. What's the strength thing? That one is like booming because you've had so much life experience. So yeah, please don't worry about that.
The word loyalty came to mind. If you are in your mid 50s and you've had 4 jobs your whole life, the first thing that I thought of, wow, loyalty, honor, integrity, these things have just popped in my brain. And when you are on, you know, writing your CV, you say things like that. I may be older, but it's because I'm loyal and I value these things. You're going to find a company that wants that.
A lot of companies value that. Benafsha, you guys value that, right? So
yeah, exactly. I like how you said to flip it, like use it to your advantage to say, I have really great experience and that's why this is going to make this the right job for me. But yeah, that is not something that would hold someone back, especially in my hiring and others that I know.
Okay, I might just quickly, we've got so many questions. So what I might do is just quickly talk through my top CV tips, and then Benafsha, I've got a couple of questions for you that I think, and then we'll go through all the live Q&A. So I think that's probably the best format, because we are just getting so many, and I just want to make sure that we are giving you just the CV and interview tips. At least if we've given you that, that's important. So I think just really quickly on CVs, so many different CV bits of forums and advice out there, and different ways that you can write your CV, structure your CV, and loads of different tools. The first thing is have a different job for the job you apply for. I know that's going to take time, and I saw a question from the audience around it takes time to change your CV each time you want to apply for a job. That's the point. Sorry, like slow down. You have to tailor it. You've got to make it right. Otherwise, there's absolutely no point sending it. You may as well not bother, because it's just not going to get reviewed. If I'm, as a recruiter, I get 100 CVs to look at every day, I'm not going to take the time. I glance at them. I need it to be tailored and relevant. So make sure you adapt it. Focus on achievements rather than duties. Google talk about this thing called the XYZ. And if you think of that when you're writing your CV as a formula, I think it will really help you. I achieved X, measured by Y, and by doing Z. So it's like, make it really clear that you had achievements, and list those, because I think duties everyone can do, and skills most of the time can be learned. But your achievements, they're unique to you. They are what identify the success you've had in that organization. I saved the company X amount of money on X supply chain. I organized X event with X amount of attendees, and the feedback was X. Those are really clear examples of how you can make sure that what you do and what you've done and you've achieved is more relevant, because the duties, I assume how to do that. And also it gives you a talking point, and it gives your interviewer a talking point. Oh, tell me about this. This looks really interesting. Tell me about that. So I think really focus on achievements. Keep it short, 1 to 2 pages max. Again, people are like, but I've had so many jobs. How can I if you don't know how to in the written word communicate what you've achieved in concise format, you need to learn, because that is going to be expected of you in your job. No one wants to read 10-page emails. You need to be able to write concisely and clearly, especially for bullet point lovers like you, Monique. People want to see the facts quickly. So I'm sorry, but if you've got a 5-page CV, that's probably not why you're not getting any jobs. No one wants to spend time reading through 5-page CVs. So keep it really short. List all your academic, personal, and professional achievements. Do not lie. You will get found out. So don't say, I've done this, if you haven't. There's just no point. A lot of companies run proper checks, like criminal record checks, academic qualification checks, credit checks. You just don't lie. If you're leaving any gaps, explain them. I went traveling, I took a career gap, I was taking care of someone, I was out of work. Just explain it so that it's obvious why the gap is there. Make sure your grammar is correct. Obviously, rehearse in terms of the interview, rehearse your elevator pitch over and over and over out loud in the mirror, and practice all of your answers to the questions out loud in the mirror. And I know that sounds weird, but it's like a script. The more you practice it, the more you say it, the more you feel more confident doing it. And just like Monique said right at the start of this webinar, it's a skill. Interviewing is a skill. And the more you practice, the more you say it out loud, the more you look at yourself in the mirror when you're doing it, or practice on someone you about. That's so awkward, it's hilarious. Practice saying it out loud. It's so important that you follow these rules all the time. This isn't a case of just doing it once. You've got to do it the whole time, and even if it gets really informal in the meeting, you start building loads of rapport with the person, you've still got to keep it professional. You've still got to get the main points across. Don't assume that they know everything about you just because they've got your CV in front of you. You've got to bring it to life. And the only way to do that is to practice it. Right now, we're doing a lot of video interviews. So please make sure you've got a stable connection, that you won't get distracted as much as possible. I know that's probably difficult if you've got dogs. Monique's have to lock her dogs up. I've sent my kids out. Like, you've got to do what you've got to do to make sure you don't get distracted right now and someone doesn't run in and disturb. And also make sure you are wearing clothes on your bottom half. We probably all saw that hilarious thing going around where the man was wearing shorts, but they were definitely boxers. So yeah, definitely make sure you're wearing something on your bottom half as well. And my final tip for interviews is preparation. Do your research, know why you want to work for the firm, and say that in a meeting and in the follow-up. You know, I want to work for you for X. Like Benafsha said, I've seen that you've got this. I'd like to make sure that you heard that about me, or that you saw that about me. And it's just, we were talking about this in the follow-up. We love getting a thank you, you know, afterwards. It gives you, and especially if you take the time, don't make sure there are no spelling mistakes in it. Take the time to send a really nice thank you, because that goes a long way, I think. Did you guys have anything you wanted to add on any of that?
I would just say that what you highlighted is exactly what I look for. So looking for detail, but still keeping it succinct and to the point. So it's easy to put a few bullet points on the page, but if you keep things general or sound generic, you aren't telling your story. What makes you the right candidate? And then highlighting accomplishments and achievements. So what are you most proud of? Is it volunteer work you've done? Is it the person you worked for and why? Is it a tech implementation you helped with? I think what Sarabeth said about your hybrid identity. So while your resume should probably have your official company title listed somewhere, the rest of the detail can express what it really is that makes up the work you do. Because especially for most of us as assistants, it's a lot more than what the title implies. So I just highlight that everything that you said is exactly what I look for.
And Benafsha, we've covered so much today. Why does everything we've talked about matter when it comes to hiring? Why is it important?
Yeah, there are so many people in the world. There are so many jobs, so many applicants, and you need to stand out. You just do. So if someone came to an interview with me, able to speak about their strengths, their identity, their passion, I'd be extremely impressed. I don't see it that often. And when I do, that person really stands out to me. So while the resume helps you get yourself to the interview stage, that's when you then need to really shine and tell your story directly. So don't pick up your resume and read directly from it. What I want is to be fascinated by a candidate's experience, a story, their background, whatever that is, because it could be someone that's entry level right out of college, or it could be someone that's extremely experienced, but everyone has a different story that makes them who they are. And like you said, there's a lot of candidates out there, but there's a lot of skills and tasks to a job that people can learn, but it's about the person. So for myself, I am in a position, and even in my HR position, that the people before me had a significant amount of more experience or higher degrees than I did. And it doesn't make me any less unsuccessful or qualified. And for my company, it was about me and my achievements and what makes me the right person in that role. But yeah, I just think there's just so much out there. And even as a candidate, there's so many companies and jobs out there. So understanding what you're going to thrive in is really important.
I think it's so important, especially if you're wanting to stay somewhere for the long term, which is, again, progression in an organization takes time. You have to be patient. You have to prove yourself, especially if you're in an administrative or support role, because the career path isn't linear. It's not, the company isn't going to be able to say to you, right, here is the very clear job progression available to you. You have to be curious, bide your time. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you're working for a company where your values align. You're going to be much happier and you're going to enjoy it a lot more. I have a cool question for you, Benafsha, as well, and for everyone else that wants to join in too. Do you think CVs will be as relevant in the future?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I think they'll always be required with a job application because it's really the first thing a hiring manager can look to understand the candidate and determine if there's someone that they want to interview. But I also think recruiters, and so for myself, so the recruiting relationships I have, if a recruiter says to me to meet a candidate because they are the right candidate and ignore what's on their resume, they might not have all those things, but you need to meet them, I will. But no matter what, I think the resume is still a resource there that tells your story. I don't see that going away. But that's my opinion.
Anyone else?
I agree. I think it's always, there's always going to have to be some sort of regulatory giving, here's my skill set for that job beforehand, because no employer is going to be able to have 1,000 conversations for a job. It's just not, no matter what the technology is that comes up, it's just not. The CV will always be relevant.
I come from a design field, so I just always emphasize portfolios. I think there's something about showing what you've done that's really critical.
Thank you. I'm glad you answered that question, Sarabeth. I agree with you. I think it's really important if you've done something like if you produced the company handbook, or if you created the company newsletter, or like show those things. You can attach them as long as they're not confidential, of course, as long as they're things that are able to be shared. But absolutely, you should be showing those and demonstrating those. My final question for you, Benafsha, and then we're going to go on to the general ones, if that's okay, is when you interview a candidate who hasn't done their research, how do you feel?
I think it makes the conversation difficult. So I want to interview someone that's passionate and interested in the role and the company, and a conversation can be a lot more meaningful and wholesome if they've done their research in advance. Otherwise, I find myself talking them through things that they probably could have found out from the company website or the job description, and I think it takes away from really valuable time.
I 100% agree. I think if you don't do your research and you don't get the job, you really should not be surprised. You have to do your research. Okay, well, we've got lots of questions here, so I'm just going to go through some of them. Okay. I was advised by another recruiter to send video intros with your application. Do you agree? Well, anyone want to answer that?
A video? You said a video?
Yeah, I was Kareen. I was advised by another recruiter to send a video intro with my application. Do you agree?
I immediately thought of Legally Blonde, of Elle Woods giving her her thing for Harvard. I mean, Benafsha, you probably can answer this better than I could. Maybe if you represent yourself better on a video, again, there's something to be said for narrowing the playing field. If your employer doesn't want to click on that and watch your 1-minute video, then that's not your job anyway. And if you do submit a video and somebody clicks on it and says that was the best darn thing I've ever seen, well, then you're in the right spot. So it might actually be a good way to narrow down the playing field. But
yeah, I've never seen that before. But again, I'm geared towards finance, right? So it depends, I guess, on the industry and the company. I mean, if you trust your recruiter and they're saying that this will help you stand out, then go for it. As long as you feel like in that video you can grab their attention and portray yourself, that's going to be really important. Otherwise, probably won't work out for you. But I really just think it depends on the industry. I would ask your recruiter why they're suggesting that. Like, do other candidates do that? Do they know the client well enough that this would be the right thing
yeah,
to do?
I agree. I think just ask why it's important and why it's needed, and just make sure that it's for the right reasons, and if it is, then great. Another question around how far, I'm just conscious of time, it's 5:30 in the UK, different in other locations, but I'm not going to do that quickly because I can't. we have a couple of questions and I just want to sort of wrap up. So I think one of the other questions I've had is, how far back should you go with jobs? I.e., should you list every single one of them, or start with your first permanent job? I have a very strong opinion on this, but if anyone else wants to answer as well, I mean, I 100% think you should, but you just don't need to go into detail. Obviously, if there are jobs that are totally irrelevant, and let's say, well, while you were studying, and if you're at the early part of your career and you don't have a huge amount of work history, then absolutely list everything you've done. If you're in the later stages of your career and you've had lots of jobs, then definitely, you don't need to include the ones that you did while you were studying, or if you've temped loads, rather than listing every single temp job as an individual job, combine them into one job. But I'm always a bit suspicious if there's things like someone's just missed 10 years off their CV. I don't like that. I
agree. I'd include all permanent jobs. But again, for the most recent ones, include the bulk of the detail, and the others could just be listed out. It could be a bullet point or a little summary here and there, but having it on there for permanent jobs, I think, is important.
Cool. And I think the last question I'm going to ask, because I think this is really, really relevant one right now, is someone said, how can I explain the gap on my CV during COVID? I think exactly that. Like the whole world understands that a lot of people have lost their jobs at this time. And I think if you simply just put, employment ended due to the COVID-19 crisis, I think absolutely everyone will understand what that meant. So there's nothing to be ashamed of there. And actually putting reasons for leaving quite often with your underneath your jobs can be quite helpful as well, especially if you have lots of movement. So if you have moved loads and loads and loads of times throughout your career, like just putting a few reasons for leaving under each one can actually help. Again, just explain the movement.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Benafsha?
I was just going to say, I think honesty is really important. So right now, there's so many people in the boat and everyone understands what's going on. Even if you have other gaps in your resume because you lost a job or left a job. I've left a job before having a new job because it just wasn't the right job for me. It didn't stop me because I was honest and I said, I just had to leave. It just wasn't working for me, and I wanted to dedicate the time to find the right position for me, and that takes a lot of time. So I think honesty is just really important, and people will respect and value that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming. Remember, we've got our competition where you can be in with a chance to win Sarabeth's book and free coaching sessions with Monique and I. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. There are so many questions on here. I can't answer them all now. I'm sorry. I wish I could, but please send them to me. I will respond and I will help you. And me and my team, we will help you. And if you go onto your Instagram feeds and you take a picture of you watching this webinar and share it on your story, you tag in the speakers, follow Joss Search. We'll be in touch with the winners next week. Yeah, thank you so much to the people who have joined me. So Monique, Benafsha, Sarabeth, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Loved this. I agree. If you have questions, please reach out, and maybe we need a part 2 to answer all the questions.
Yeah, maybe we would just do a part 2 just around questions. Well, there's going to pop up a survey at the end, so please, give us your feedback. We're always trying to improve, and as I said, we want to help out as much as possible. Benafsha and Sarabeth, thank you so much. Thank you, Sarabeth, for introducing the concept of hybridity to me and to the audience. I think it's super exciting, and for a lot of the people I deal with, something that I think really, really resonates with them.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We will be sending the follow-up tomorrow, the recording, so feel free to share it with anyone, watch it back, and the key takeaways. And yeah, any questions, as I said, please direct them to me at savannah@josssearch.com. I'm on LinkedIn, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Good luck out there. Stay strong, stay positive. Cheers. Bye, everyone.
Bye.